Welcome into Pallilo Points. I am Brandon Strange. I'm joined, of course, by ESPN Houston's Charlie Pallilo of the Press Box. Charlie, welcome in. I wanted to have you in this morning so we could address all these NBA rumors that are flying about. Obviously, last week is when we had the genesis of the rumors of James Harden possibly being traded from the Rockets. Over the weekend, a Twitter account, Clutch NBA, tweeted that if James Harden were to be dealt, he preferred three teams. Those are the Heat, Net, and Sixers. I want to talk about all three of those and the different scenarios that are kind of floating about. We'll start with Philly. Obviously, that trade would be somewhere centered around Ben Simmons and pieces, perhaps Matisse Thybulle. What do you think about a trade with the Sixers?
Done. Not in actuality, but if available. If James Harden's going to step on the gas, right, he's been a guy who went on top of his game at one end of the court. At other times, at the other end of the court, not so into it. That wouldn't seem to get better if he's going through at least some motions, unhappy with where things are. Obviously, with Philadelphia, the subtext shifted dramatically with Daryl Morey taking over basketball operations, the Morey-Harden alliance, easy dots to connect. Ben Simmons is a unique player. He can't shoot from the outside whatsoever. Still comes within fighting distance of averaging a triple-double. He's still just 24, turning 25 years of age. The injury history is scary, but you'd be making a bet on some tremendous upside and a new real fulcrum for your franchise going forward. I can't believe in terms of risk-reward you could attain a guy with a higher possible reward going forward if you're the Rockets. In the end, would Philadelphia make that trade? If so, that's probably as good as any other option that we're going to be talking about in terms of what the Rockets might be able to mine in return for Harden.
Interesting. Well, let's move on to the Heat. They have, a lot of young guys, specifically the three that we've heard the names kind of talked about was Kendrick Nunn, Tyler Hero, and Duncan Robinson. And then out of those three, or some sort of combination of those three, with maybe an Andre Iguodala or a Kelly Olynyk just to make the money work. What do you think about that sort of trade? What any positives you're pulling from that kind of scenario?
Duncan Robinson would have been about a perfect rocket for Daryl Morey to identify, but Daryl's probably chief failing over the last few years, while the Rockets had good teams, was not adding top-tier three-point shooting to a team that was shattering records for three-point attempts every year. Duncan Robinson, 45% with the Heat, but Pat Riley might say that, well, as a role player, as great a three-point shooter as he was, if I have Jimmy Butler and James Harden and Tyler Hero, where are going to be the minutes and the shots for Duncan Robinson? I'd be surprised if Riley gave up both the cheap labor components that Hero and Robinson represent. The concern for the Rockets would be, even if you're getting decent players back, if you have a roster full of role players and zero stars, you're not going anywhere. So that's why, to me, taking the shot on Ben Simmons would be the higher upside play. But if the Sixers aren't going there and Harden really wants out, and if you're Tillman Fertitta looking to slash and burn payroll where you can, if Miami gives you a combination of two at least legit NBA rotation players, well, Rockets' depth hasn't been very good when they had good teams the last couple of years. So that's a deal I'd still be probably looking to make and wondering how Butler and Harden would coexist when Butler's real big on work ethic at both ends of the court. Then again, Harden might just say, yell at me all you want, James. I'm going to South Beach.
Next, Adrian Wojnarowski tweeted that Brooklyn tops Harden's possible wish list of teams. Farbotis Narshi, which I hope I'm saying that correct, tweeted that his sources are saying that the Rockets are exploring a trade that involves Spencer Dinwiddie, Karis LeVert, Taurean Prince, or Jared Allen. So this is, it's a lot of young players. He's tweeting that he's heard this is almost a done deal. What do you think about that?
Yeah, the almost a done deal sounds ambitious, but if properly sourced, however the name is pronounced, I will not try because I'm blissfully ignorant on it. The Rockets really hold the hammer on James Harden, and he's under contract for 2 more years. And even though Harden's game should age well, is he really going to walk on a $47 million option when he's 33 years old? Westbrook's $47 million option is when he's 34 years old, and part of why Westbrook's trade value is maybe 20 cents on the dollar for Harden's. Specifically to Brooklyn's offer, Dinwiddie and LeVert are legit NBA guards. I don't think either guy can be the best or second best on a contender. The Rockets, if trading Harden, would have to come to grips with the reality that they're in a building phase, if they wouldn't want to use the word rebuild. But with Harden and Westbrook, as currently comprised, the Rockets are not bona fide championship contenders. So if you can escape more than $150 million in 2 seasons worth of payroll obligations in Harden and Westbrook and reset and try to identify pieces going forward, scary proposition. It took Daryl Morey several years, 3 straight lottery years, before maneuvering the Rockets into a position to acquire the so-called foundational player in Harden that set up the last 8 years. Now you have Rafael Stone, a general manager who's yet to make a deal in his life. How long will it take to identify the next guy who by himself can assure you're going to have a pretty good team? Right? If you add LeVert and Dinwiddie, Jared Allen's a guy I would almost demand be included in the deal, a rim running 1/4 of the price Capella with maybe more upside than Clint Capella had. But it's going to feel like you're just churning assets and not really getting anywhere, especially in a Western Conference that's so top-heavy with contenders. Will the Rockets internally come to the reality they're no longer a serious contender, and if there has to be some pain absorbed and decline in fan interest and related revenue for a couple of seasons before you can get back to chasing real pleasure in the NBA, would Tillman Fertitta go there as an owner? On the financial side, maybe so, given the hemorrhaging he's doing with his other business interests and with the NBA's current situation. It's looking real promising for that vaccine rolling around come spring. Well, that's not going to cover most of this next NBA season. So if the Rockets come out of this with a roster in retooling mode that most people won't have interest in going to the games, well, they can't go anyway, and you have that first year mostly under your belt, and then hopefully be better positioned going forward with cap space to maybe chase a big-time free agent summer 2021. There is an unfortunate analogy to be drawn between the Texans and the Rockets for where they are, that maybe you absorb the worst body blows and come out of it for the next season looking as bad as you have ever looked, but it sets you up for 2 and 3 years from now if you have the right executives in place to shorten the time of your rebound getting back to being a good team.
Well, that is the operative word, the right executives in place. And I guess in the short future, we're about to find out whether both of those teams actually have the right executives in place. Charlie, we'll talk about it when it happens. Thank you so much.
NBA draft this week. That's a time where you often see trades announced after the draft. So maybe sooner than later if it's to happen. If you're a betting man, I think Westbrook is done wearing a Rockets uniform. Harden, depends whose sources we're buying into.